Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Kevin McMahill. I'm the Sheriff of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. I'm here to provide you additional details on the active shooter incident that occurred on Wednesday, December 6th, 2023 at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. The event was initiated as a shooting call at 11:45 a.m. The incident occurred in the 4500 block of South Maryland Parkway within the UNLV campus at Beam Hall. You can see the map to my left. Our suspect is identified as 67-year-old Anthony James Polito, P-O-L-I-T-O. He lived in Henderson, Nevada. He had a previous criminal history of computer trespass out of Virginia in 1992. You can see his photo to my left. Polito was armed with a Taurus 9mm handgun. He had brought 11 magazines to the scene with him. 9 loaded magazines were found on his person after the shooting, and you can see in the photo to the left, one of the magazine carriers that was fixed to his body. I'll talk about that here in a little bit. The gun was purchased legally in 2022, and at this point in the investigation, we do not know how many rounds he has fired. The names of the involved University of Nevada, Las Vegas officers will be released by their agency within the next 48 hours. I'm told that that will occur tomorrow. The deceased victims are identified as follows. The first victim, Patricia Navarro Velez, lived in Las Vegas and was a 39-year-old female. Navarro Velez was the assistant professor in accounting who worked in the Beam building on the 4th floor. Che Jung, or Jerry Chang, was a 64-year-old male. He lived in Henderson, and he was a professor of business who worked in the Beam building on the 3rd floor. The third victim in this case, we will not be identifying because the Clark County Coroner's Office has not yet been able to notify the next of kin. And so out of respect for the family, we will wait to identify the third victim until the family is notified. The fourth victim is a shooting victim who's a 38-year-old male. He is currently at Sunrise Hospital, and his condition has been downgraded to, again, a life-threatening position. He was a visiting professor. At this time, it is unknown how long it took for the suspect to find the first victim in the building. All of the deceased victims were located inside of the building and are all faculty members at the university. The following is the sequence of events as we know them right now. On the 6th at 11:45, a citizen called LVMPD Communication to report shots being fired on the UNLV campus in the 4500 block of South Maryland Parkway. During several subsequent 911 calls, the location of the active shooter was determined to be at the Frank and Estella Beam Hall, which is right next to the Student Union. There's a map here on the screen next to me. Immediately, we implemented a valley-wide multi-jurisdictional agency counterterrorism action capability, or otherwise referred to as MACTAC response, which headed immediately to the UNLV campus. That's all police jurisdictions, fire and EMS begin to head immediately towards the scene of the incident. Our investigation revealed that the suspect arrived on the campus at about 11:28 a.m. in a 2007 Lexus. We were able to track his vehicle to a parking lot south of the Beam Hall at around 11:30 a.m. Our suspect had exited his vehicle and went to the passenger side of the vehicle, where he appears to begin to put objects onto his waistband. We now know that he then walked north towards the Beam Hall and at one point pauses briefly, turns around, and returns back towards the south parking lot before entering the building on the southeast corner at approximately 11:33 a.m. We now know that at 11:45 approximately, the shots were first reported to dispatch. Shortly thereafter, officers from both UNLV and LVMPD arrived and heard shooting coming from inside the Beam Hall and went in immediately, and I stress without hesitation, to neutralize the threat. The suspect exited the building at around 11:55 and was confronted by UNLV plainclothes police officers, and a gunfight ensued. The suspect was struck multiple times and collapsed to the ground. Officers quickly formed an arrest team and took him into custody. He was deceased at the scene. We're now going to play a video of this shooting scene. And before we do this, I just want to set it up for you very quickly. You will see the suspect come down from over here. There's an officer that believes he's potentially a professor, and there's another officer off screen that you won't be able to see here, and we'll talk about him in here in just a couple of minutes. Go ahead, Carlos. There's our suspect to the bottom right. Officer, he pulls a gun. Officer runs away, goes around the side of the car. And our UNLV officer then ends the suspect's actions. Officers then assembled action teams and began a systematic search for additional suspects and victims. Those teams went through multiple buildings and multiple floors. Many times we had to force entry into rooms where students and faculty were sheltering in place. Officers had to escort each one of those rooms of faculty and students to safety. During the search of Beam Hall, 2 victims were located on the 3rd floor. 1 victim was located on the 4th floor. And we believe the 4th victim who survived was on the 5th floor when shot. He got out of the building and was taken to Sunrise Hospital. And I just want to stress to you, we don't yet know the sequence of the shootings. We don't know where specifically, what floor it started at, or which victim was the first victim. We are still piecing together that information. There are no cameras on the interior of the building, so it's taking us more time to understand that. What I found out right before I walked in here is that the victim that was shot on the 5th floor that had walked outside, he was met by 2 Metro police officers, thrown into a police car, driven to an arriving community ambulance, which then immediately took that individual to Sunrise, which probably saved his life. The suspect's vehicle was recovered at UNLV, and after executing a search warrant, we located a dash cam in the vehicle, which allowed us to have a better understanding of the suspect's movements earlier in the morning. Our detectives learned prior to the shooting, the suspect had earlier visited a Henderson post office and sent 22 letters to various university personnel across the country with no return address. We are currently working with the postal inspector and our federal partners to begin processing these letters. We do not know the contents of these letters, and we're working to contact the recipients of those letters. As most of you know, last night LVMPD detectives executed a search warrant at the suspect's Henderson residence, and some items were recovered there. Importantly, there was a chair with an arrow pointing down to a document, which that document was similar to a last will and testament. There were several computers and hard drive components. There was ammunition consistent with the same cartridge cases located at the scene, and there was a Taurus handgun box matching the handgun that he used. I want to stress that we're still learning a lot about this suspect and still trying to understand motive. We know he applied numerous times for a job with several Nevada higher education institutions and was denied each time. The suspect had a list of people he was seeking on a university campus, as well as faculty from the Eastern Carolina University. We have contacted almost everyone on those lists to make sure that they are all right. We have done that for all of UNLV and all of Eastern Carolina, with the exception of one individual who was on an international flight. We are looking into the suspect's former employees, including Eastern Carolina University, and working closely with local police in those jurisdictions, as well as the FBI. We also know the suspect was struggling financially, as evidenced by when we served a search warrant on his apartment, there was a notice of eviction taped to the front door. We believe the suspect acted alone, and we have zero indication of any other suspects at this time. Our investigators are still out at UNLV. I also have to say that when first responders, you guys can understand how chaotic this scene was. When our first responders arrived, people were running, people were hunkering down. Many people had already fled the scene, and their recollections are going to be critical to our investigators as we move forward to have a better understanding of what exactly occurred. So anyone that has information or video of what occurred inside Beam Hall at the time of the shooting or witnessed the officer-involved shooting is encouraged to reach out to the LVMPD Homicide Section at 702-828-3521 or Crime Stoppers at 702-385-5555. One additional nugget is right before we walked into this briefing, I learned that in the screening of those envelopes that we were able to intercept after going through 14,000 pieces of mail and identifying the 22 that were sent, the first letter that we opened had an unknown white powder substance in it. Our armor unit and detectives are out currently processing those envelopes, and what we're asking is that if anybody in the education world receives a letter with a no return address that is taped, we ask you to proceed with caution and contact your local authorities. Of particular attention from the ones that have been addressed are those at Carolina and UNLV. And so with that, I'm going to pause and turn it over to the UNLV Vice President of Public Safety Services and Director of UNLV Police Services, Chief Adam Garcia. Chief.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good afternoon. My name is Adam Garcia, Chief of Police for University Police Services, Southern Command. Yesterday, we lost members of our rebel family, and I wanted to extend my deepest condolences to the families of the victims of yesterday's incident, their friends, and our colleagues at UNLV. Our community has suffered an unimaginable loss by this senseless criminal act, and my heart breaks for the victims' families, our students, our staff, our state, and our country. The collective response and the actions of our initially responding officers no doubt saved lives. As the sheriff said, the initial calls began coming into both UNLV dispatch as well as Las Vegas Metro dispatch. The original call received by University Police was 11:44. The first officer on the scene of the incident was there within 78 seconds. Additional arriving units from Metro and UPD then entered Beam Hall, and as you saw in the video, two University Police detectives then confronted the suspect and engaged in a gun battle which neutralized the threat. These two detectives are heroes. They risked their lives in order to save countless others, and as the sheriff pointed out, what could have been a bloodbath. I want to thank Sheriff McMahill and the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, along with all of our regional partners who came to our aid yesterday without question and without hesitation. Henderson PD, Clark County School District, Boulder City, North Las Vegas, Clark County Fire, and all of our emergency medical professionals, as well as our federal partners, the FBI, Marshal Service, ATF, and DEA. we as a law enforcement community stand together, not only yesterday, but today, and always in working together to create a safer future for our UNLV and Nevada System of Higher Education students and family. While we navigate this difficult period, we will unite, we will support one another, and we will honor the memory of those who we lost. And by doing so, we will create that rebel strong spirit that is UNLV. With that, I'm going to turn it over to UNLV's president, Dr. Keith Whitfield.
Good morning. I want to first start by saying thank you just does not seem like it's enough for the police officers that rather than running like a normal person would, running away from danger, they ran to danger, and that they made our university safe and clearly stopped a larger tragedy from happening. So I want to start by thanking our university police services. The Las Vegas Metro Police Department showed up in numbers that were so impressive that it gave many people a better sense of safety at a time when it was hard to feel safe. I also want to thank the Clark County Fire Department and the other first responders who selflessly and decisively moved in and made sure that our campus could try to return to trying to be safe again. Safety is first and foremost one of the priorities for our university. And so incidents like these actually rock us to the bone in thinking about how we can make sure that we have an educational opportunity for our students that is free from violence. This is a day that we're not going to forget. It's a day that's marked in our history from now on. But as we go forward, we have to think about the people who have experienced this, both firsthand and I think even secondary. And we want to make sure that people feel that it's okay not to be okay. That we have provided and made sure that we have services in terms of mental health services and counseling. The Resiliency Center was set up after October 1, and it's another resource that we're coordinating with to make sure that anyone who actually needs help can get help. I have been absolutely overwhelmed by this city. I'm still relatively new. Sometimes it doesn't feel like that, but in my 4th year, I've always felt connected to this place, but I think now I have a really good reason why. It's because of the incredible support that has been offered to myself and to our university in terms of people, agencies, everything, our hospitality industry, all reaching out to see if they could find out ways to be able to help us at this time. I want to thank all of you all. I want to be able to thank our federal delegates, our Nevada commissioners, senators, assembly people. They've all reached out to try to figure out if there's any way that they can extend a helping hand. I think the helping hand comes in the form of being able to make sure that we stay together as a community. These kinds of incidents are things that can disrupt, erase, and erode the feeling of community. At UNLV, we are a community, but we're a community of Las Vegas and of Southern Nevada and of the state. And so your support is greatly appreciated and very much so needed. Lastly, I will say that moving on in the future, we are working on future plans for the university, thinking about how we will be conducting both final exams, which start next week, and how we can best do those to be able to accommodate people and where they may be and how they may feel. We're also thinking about commencement and other activities that the university is going to be doing. We'll be sharing that information in the coming days and trying to keep people as well informed as possible. With that, thank you very much, and Las Vegas, thank you. UNLV really thanks you. Thank you. And let me introduce, if I could, next up is Commissioner Jim Gibson.
Thank you, President. Thank you. And Mr. President, you need to know that this community becomes stronger every time we're challenged. It's terrible that sometimes it takes challenges, even these kinds of challenges, but we are there for you, we're there for your students, we're there for your faculty, and for their families that many of us have been hearing from as they all were hoping for as much information as they could get. We want to thank your police department, Chief, and your police department, Sheriff, because it is, after all, a fact that the bravery and the response, the timely response, was critical to keeping the loss of life and injury at a minimum. And our hearts go out to the victims of the tragedy and their families. The names of two of the victims have been released. I think one of the things, at least so far from what you have heard and I have heard, students were not the targets here. And I think it's especially important to this community and to the UNLV family to make note of that fact, that our kids were not at risk, as terrible as the events are. We want to also make you aware that the Resiliency Center that was stood up after 1 October has been learning the lessons of trauma type counseling. It is referred to as trauma-informed counseling from the very day that the Resiliency Center was established. And our hope is that as we work together with UNLV and all of the rest of the community, that we'll be able to push as much of the work in helping this community cope and deal with the tragedy and its effect on them will be handled by and worked through as much as possible our Resiliency Center. Tenille Pereira and her team are remarkably talented, experienced people who have tracked the people that have been counseled by them in a way that informs us on the effects of these tragedies and helps us keep track of the people who might not otherwise appear on anybody's list or be on anyone's mind. Their number is 702-455-2433. The 2433 is also AIDE, so 455-AID, if that's easier to remember. An incident like this touches so many lives, so many hearts. There are people who want to make financial donations, and we have heard from them. In the coming weeks, we will have worked out a way to do that. We have had some discussion with UNLV and with the Resiliency Center and with Barbara Buckley, who is responsible for legal aid and has been kind of at the center of some of that kind of work. And our hope is that there will be information about that kind of action on our behalf coming out of the Resiliency Center soon. And as soon as it is available, we'll get it to you. Thank you very much. Now I would like to introduce Clark County Fire Chief John Steinbeck.
Thank you. I'll be brief, but I do want to again give my heartfelt condolences to those affected, and my thanks to UNLV and to our wonderful officers at Metro. I am the Fire Chief, John Steinbeck. I'm also oversee the Office of Emergency Management for Clark County. And so in that purview, that's the Resiliency Center and some of the victim services fall under us. And so exactly what the Commissioner just spoke to, I'll just expand just a little bit on. He gave the phone number. I'll give it again, 702-455-AIDE. But we also have a stood-up website, facofsouthernnevada.org. And let me tell you just some of the brief history, of course, is we built that after 1 October especially for the victims of 1 October at that time. It has then, since then, transitioned to the victims of all need and all crime. And so that way we had it ready for an incident like today. And some of those things that are available are behavioral health referrals, on-site therapists right there at the Resiliency Center, out-of-state providers, as they're not all local students, of course, sir. So some might be going back home, and the Resiliency Center can assist with that. Legal advice, and it might sound odd, but still could assist with reunification efforts, and that's not uncommon, even this far after an incident, that there could be some needs for reunification. And so the people at the Resiliency Center stand ready to do that. The other point that I want to make is we still see people from the incident from 6 years ago today, and sometimes it's the first time. So the Resiliency Center and all of these resources that we have built are not there for us to say, you need these now. They are there to be ready for when the victims and the survivors and those affected tell us that they need them. And so that's the commitment that we have, is that we're ready to go when that need arises. And whether it's today, it's next week, or it's 3 years from now. And so keep that in mind. And it'll be stood up and it'll be ready. And it's an ongoing resource. It's in charge of navigation, referrals, direct services, as I mentioned, and then a coordinating effort agency for a lot of the other resources that will be available. So that's it. I'll turn it back over to the sheriff. Thank you.
All right, I'll be happy to take some questions. If you would, please just say who you are, where you're from. So.
Yeah, I'm with Giselle Lamar. I'm with NBC. Could you specify which lessons were learned during October 1st that you applied to this situation?
So the question is, what lessons did we learn during 1 October that we applied to this situation? I think the fire chief and I could both talk at length about this, and maybe I'll let you start with that, John. You want to start with the response to that?
I'm happy to, sir.
I'll follow up after you.
Yes. So again, we could certainly speak to that for hours, but specifically on the response side of it, of course, is the command element, right? So immediately we want to have a unified command as quickly as possible, and also on the operations side. We want to get our rescue task forces engaged as quickly as possible. National average is something like 45 minutes most of the time. They were up and ready and rolling and within 10 minutes. When I say a rescue task force, that is a combined task force between law enforcement and medical providers. In this case, in this jurisdiction, fire department that is trained together and that is ready to go ahead and give those relief efforts and provide medical aid. And so those are immediate on the operations side from the fire department side of it. On the recovery side of it, of course, is everything that we've already started to talk about and to build. Before, we did not have ready to go plans that were in place for victim services, right? No community really does. Myself, the sheriff, others back here, we've gone across the nation now since that incident 6 years ago, that teaching this, that you have to have these resources in play. Well, now we had them in play. They were ready to go, and they're ready to go ongoing. Last time we were building them as we were going ahead and responding. We also learned that recovery starts long before the incident begins, and then certainly during the incident. So while we had the responders there trying to neutralize the subject, trying to take care of those that were injured, and to do everything else that's appropriate during the response side, there's others that are back that are working on the recovery side. And so all of that is an extreme logistic issue. And the last part that I'll certainly talk to, and there's a problem with this one, it'll be a problem with the next one, and it's been a problem with every incident in time, is the control of information. We do have a joint information center. It's very important to us, and it did work very well. There is just so much information that comes across. You know, even myself, as counting right there on the scene, at one point in time, I had the victim count way higher than what we ended up with. And so I'm really grateful that the initial information was wrong, grateful beyond words, but you have to know that that's coming through. Well, at the same time, we got information coming from, you know, everybody with a phone, everybody with that's there on scene, everybody that's out there that's just, you know, using conjecture as to what's happening and also posting that. But we have a joint information center that's in place with the emergency agencies represented. That's through the county as the lead agency. So not only can we control and understand the information, but that information is necessary back to us as well as we're making direct operational decisions and recovery decisions. And so that is just a brief answer to your question, ma'am. I'll turn it back over to the sheriff.
I'd just like to finish up by saying that we could really answer that question probably for hours. What I think was most amazing to me was that as the undersheriff and myself and the fire chief and Adam were there on scene and watching the operations of our individuals, there was seamless integration regardless of what kind of uniform you were wearing, what service that you belonged to. There was zero hesitation, and they just executed unbelievably well. And that didn't happen on October 1 nearly as well as it did. And I attribute a lot of that to the Reality-Based Training Center and our mandate to train together as we move forward in the future. And it's only going to get better from here. So, Dana.
You said that the officers arrived and went in without hesitation. Are the officers we saw in the video, are those the officers who went in? Did they search for 10 minutes and then come back out?
So Dana's asking if the officers that you saw in the video are the officers that went in. Yeah, they did go in the office. We still are not exactly sure the suspect's movements and the officers' movements, and we'll still work on that investigation to determine exactly that. But yes, we do know those detectives went in along with some Metro Police officers immediately.
And were any of the victims on the target list that you found?
No, I said that, I believe, in the briefing, but none of the victims that were on the target list were actually, I'm sorry, none of the individuals listed on the target list became a victim. Sorry.
Vanessa Murphy, KLAS. Sheriff, were there any warning signs, any conversations with Galito's friends, family, neighbors, anything like that?
So Vanessa's asking if there's any warning signs, any conversations with the suspect's friends or family or anything that we became aware of. Of course, we're scrubbing social media devices, the computers that we seized, all of those things. But prior to the incident, the answer to your question is no.
Sheriff Ken Ritter, AP. First, I'd like to ask Chief Garcia a question. Will you identify the hero detectives as you describe them for us at this time? And Sheriff, I do have another question.
Not at this time. That information will be forthcoming at tomorrow's press conference.
And Ken, the answer to that question is we're not allowed to until 48 hours after an officer-involved shooting. It's the same protocol.
Maybe I should have known. You dropped the report about threats to University of UNLV and Eastern Carolina University targets is new to us. Would you go over that again for us, please? How many names were on those lists? And has everybody been contacted? Thank you.
So Ken's asking if I can give you the name or the number of names that were on the list. There were names from both UNLV faculty as well as Eastern Carolina faculty. I don't remember the number right off the top of my head. I can provide that to you subsequent. However, all of the UNLV faculty members have been notified, and all but one of the Carolina faculty members have been notified, and that individual has not been contacted because they're on an overseas flight.
And I meant to ask also, have the 22, you described 22 letters went out, have all of those people been identified and contacted?
Yes. Ken asked if we've notified and contacted all of the individuals that, of the 22 letters that we've become aware of. I believe they've all been contacted. Sir?
With KTMB, is there an increase in the security measures on UNLV campus moving forward? Are you guys planning to have more surveillance there as well?
So I'll let the chief from there answer, but I would like to, the question was, is there an increase on the University of Nevada, Las Vegas campus? I just want to give kudos to UNLV. While I was there in the immediate aftermath of this event, the notification system that was continually going out and being provided to the students and faculty, I thought was just exceptional. And I haven't had a chance to tell you that myself, but just really, really well done. But if you want to answer that.
Thank you. We are currently in the process of looking at the fundamental platforms that we are using to notify our campuses in the event of an emergency. We're currently looking at the number of folks who we have assigned to each campus. As of today, we have well more than a dozen Metro officers, as well as another large number contingent of university police officers who are assigned to UNLV campus. We are also leaning on our local partners, in particular the Clark County School District in Henderson and North Las Vegas, to help provide some security measures to the CSN campuses in Nevada State and DRI. Once we have gotten past this event, the intent is that we will bring a group on board who will assist us in looking at this event. What did we do right? What needs improvement? And then we'll be able to answer the question as to what can we do to improve safety on campus. Of course.
Hi, Janelle Calderon with the Nevada Independent. This is a question for President Whitfield. What do you think of students petitioning for UNLV to become a closed campus?
So the question's for President Whitfield, and the question is, what do you think about students petitioning for UNLV to be a closed campus? President?
Yes, thank you. UNLV is an urban research campus. And as you look across the country, there are some where they have quote-unquote closed the campus, and others they have not. We're going to be taking a look at that and seeing, because what I hear from fellow presidents is that they don't feel that closing the campus actually ends up becoming a deterrent. When there's an evildoer that wants to get in, and if you have any kind of access to the campus, which we're Las Vegas's university. We have to make sure that we have access for you all to come and go, and to be able to take the enrichment things that come from our fine arts, from the STEM programs for summer, all of those sorts of things. And so, as the chief mentioned, we're going to be taking a look at this incident and seeing if there's other things that we can do. I'll just say that my inclination is not to close the campus, but to see if there's other things that we can do to be able to make sure that we have other safety features in mind. One of the things that I've seen at other urban campuses, and that we do have some now, but I'm sure the chief would not turn down my offer to see if we can put more cameras on campus. And again, we're going to be looking at other kinds of protocols and things. I hate to say a horrible incident like October 1 helped, but it did actually help us think a little bit more about safety. It was amazing to see how our faculty and students actually understood how to basically hide and to be safe. They did that across campus. I think between Metro and our police officers and the fire department went across a 332-acre campus, and it ended up going through all of them, and they found people in places like that. They found me, actually, in places like that. And so there's other things that we can do. That step of trying to close the campus, I think we just have to be cautious to make sure that it doesn't ultimately hurt what our ultimate purpose is, which is to provide a great education and great opportunities for the citizens. Thank you.
Sheriff?
No, right here.
Sheriff Joe B. Hill with Fox 5. Do you know if the gunman had any other plans of violence having made it out of UNLV?
So Joe asked if I know whether the gunman had other plans of violence if he made it out of UNLV. I guess I'd start by saying I'm glad he didn't get out of UNLV. But I would answer that by saying 150 plus additional rounds of ammunition, nine additional magazines strapped. I believe that he was probably heading towards that student union, right? That student union was full of kids that were out there having a barbecue and playing Legos. And so I believe we averted a much larger tragedy by the actions of that heroic police officer. I'm going to end by saying this. There's still a lot more information. Clearly, I provided a lot of information that you did not have today. I know that you have an appetite for this information. We also have a responsibility to not release the information until it's been vetted, just like I did not release the name of the third victim. I will give you the information as quickly as I can responsibly. I promise that to you. There are a number of other aspects of this investigation that we must continue to move forward. But also, I want to remind you that tomorrow we're going to mourn one of the troopers who lost his life out of the 2 last week. We also have a presidential visit. And so I'll be balancing that opportunity for our first responders to properly honor those that lost their lives, as well as providing you that information. So it may come in a different form than a press conference, but you have my word, we will get that information. And so I appreciate you as the members of the media. Thanks for coming.
Sheriff, given that, would you tell us if Polito had a relationship with the people who were shot?
President Whitfield, can I ask you a question?
Can you show the picture again, please?